appropriate standard. The books show that Labor was going into the depreciation fund to an unprecedented level over the past few years to acquire new state houses instead of keeping the current ones up to scratch. So while Labor was bragging about new state houses, Mr Speaker, it was actually strip mining the existing stock and leaving its tenants in squalor.
Order. Jonathan Young.
Supplementary question. What is the Minister going to do about the legacy he's been left?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Phil Heatley.
Well, $2 billion of deferred maintenance and squalor is clearly a huge challenge. We'll be taking a balanced but urgent, I must say, approach, Mr Speaker, to upgrading existing stock. Members will see some increases in the number of state houses, and they will certainly see better management of the state house sector going forward.
The Honourable George Hawkins.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister's latest announcements that only South Auckland will see additions made to Housing New Zealand stock mean other areas of New Zealand will miss out or even have a reduced number of houses built? And how long has he suffered from the premature announcement syndrome that he appears to have?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, I do not recall saying that South Auckland was the only place that would see increases in state houses. I have said that National has a high priority on upgrading the state housing stock, particularly in light of this $2 billion deficit, that members will see some increases in state house numbers and that we will most certainly be better managing the state house sector.
Jonathan Young.
Minister, what will be your priority?
Point of order, the Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
Mr Speaker, I'd love to know your priorities, but I'm sure he meant to ask what are the Minister's priorities.
The Honourable member makes a perfectly valid point. Jonathan Young, if he could direct his question to the Minister.
Thank you. What will be the Minister's priority?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker.
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Order. The Minister has the floor. Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, the National Government is not going to direct Housing New Zealand to gut the depreciation fund the way the Labor Party did. What we're going to do is take a balanced but urgent approach. We're going to upgrade these state houses, and we intend to do it with some urgency.
Come now. Order. Point of order, the Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table the briefing which says there is $2 billion worth of deferred maintenance.
Is there any objection to that document being tabled? There is no objection. Come now to question number 8.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
Mr Speaker, to the Leader of the House, is it government policy that no bill will be referred to a select committee if it was National Party policy for the general election 2008?
Mr Speaker. Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
No.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
Mr Speaker, how does he reconcile that fulsome answer with the fact that last week the only reason he gave for bills not being referred to select committees was that they were in the National Party's election policy?
Mr Speaker. Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Because they were. And it may surprise the Minister to learn. The member. I'm sorry. Well, I know from long and bitter experience how much you love those little moments on that side of the House. Mr Speaker, it may surprise the member to learn that the government has decided, in the very short time prior to the very, very long Christmas break that it did want to advance some legislation that it felt was important for the economy.
Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
Mr Speaker, does this increasing confusion just expressed by that supplementary answer over his management of the government's business in the House reflect the new government's instruction to officials to avoid the use of words such as strategy, collaboration and coordination in government reports, or is that just a coincidence?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I am struggling to understand what Dr Cullen is so upset about.
Order. Order.
It would be interesting to know what Dr Cullen is so upset at. I look at his own record and I look at his performance for the last 9 years. And I tell you what, I've learned a thing or two off him. And I recall, sir, Dr Cullen coming into this House and introducing the 2006 Appropriation Parliamentary Expenditure Validation Bill. No bill on the table, no explanation of the Parliament. And you know why? Sir, because it was the bill that made legal the terrible pledge card spending of the Labor Party.
Order.
Now,
Order.
at least every bill we've brought in does good
Order.
for
Order. The member will resume his seat. Answers to questions are not meant to be opportunities for major speeches. Supplementary, the Honourable Simon Power.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is the Leader of the House confident that all members of the House could ask meaningful questions during the Select Committee process, and has he received any reports about the lodging of oral questions?
I must, Mr Speaker.
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Must report to my fellow minister I have grave concerns about that. I heard a report this morning of a member of this House of very high standing, a member who has some 24 years' experience, a member who spent 15 of those years as a minister, a member who, sir, you might have thought would understand the question and answer process quite well. But, Mr Speaker, here we are on the first day of question time in the new Parliament, and that member completely hashed up his question lodging to a point where he somewhat embarrassingly had to resubmit it. That member, sir, was none other than the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Order.
Of course, Mr Speaker, the National Party never had to resubmit a question. Mr Speaker, to the Leader of the House, does he now consider it good policy to refer bills to select committees? And if so, will he discuss with his colleague, the Minister of Energy, the desirability of referring the legislation to repeal the mandatory biofuels requirement to a select committee, as it is likely to cost jobs in New Zealand and make it easier to import unsustainable biofuels?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Thank you. Mr Speaker.
Order. Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, the matter of the biofuels bill will be discussed this afternoon, and all of the relevant information sought by the member will be given. But I'd ask, Mr Speaker, does this House recall whether or not a bill was sent to the Select Committee after a long period of urgent, extraordinary urgency, where the House went through till 5 o'clock in the morning, putting a little bit of extra tax on Grandma's sherry? Now, why was that bill, for example, never sent to a Select Committee? The member over there...
Order. The member will sit down, resume his seat. Order.